duty of the armed forces or have been honorably discharged, you may perform a hand salute. Thank you. You may be seated.
On behalf of the President of the United States Army, and a grateful nation, please accept this flag as a symbol of our appreciation for your honorable and faithful service.
You want to do this before?
Thank you.
forward and back in opposite directions. Right up the middle. Do you know what my username was? I thought we had some other stuff. We can find it again. Laura's going to speak over the phone.
Grace, yes.
Oh, Grace, definitely.
Yes.
So, is she speaking? Let's see what I'd like to do then.
Yeah.
Yes.
I could give you her call and stuff.
Okay, so Jennifer, what order would you want to do? Jennifer first, and then Grace, then you, or you then Grace?
We can try, we'll do Grace first or Jennifer?
Can Grace go first?
Sure. Okay, so Jennifer, then
Grace, would you
Grace.
mind calling me Grace?
What?
Would you mind calling in Grace?
So when I made a call on Grace, I'll ask you to come up and just to call her and bring the phone up.
Yeah, not yet.
You don't have to call her yet. She's watching on the screen. But
Okay.
when we're ready for her to speak, I'll call on you when you walk up, and you can call her and put the phone up to the speaker so everyone can hear.
Okay. So it'll be Grace and then Bruce and then Jennifer, or
Jennifer.
then Bruce, but.
Well, Grace, then Jennifer, then Bruce. Okay. Okay.
You want to do it Grace first?
I'm also calling in my colleagues to be a part. They very much want to be part of the service because we all felt so close to Maury, and so we're only allowing one clergy at a time because of the COVID, but they really want to be a part, so we're doing this a lot. Kent, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Adonai Natan, Adonai Lakach, Yishem, Adonai Bevarach. The Lord has given, the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. We're gathered here today to express our deep sorrow, but also our deep abiding love, respect, and honor for Maury Bordman, and to say goodbye and thank you to an extraordinary man who touched the lives of everybody that he knew so deeply with his goodness, his kindness, and his love. I was very deeply moved by all the love you all shared last night when we spoke yesterday afternoon. And you should know that all of us at the synagogue had a deep, abiding love for Maury as well. And I remember how wonderful he was as an usher. He was an usher for our congregation for decades, welcoming people into Shabbat services and making them feel at home, helping them to get settled to follow the service, really being a gatekeeper to introduce people to the service and to synagogue. Everyone was his friend. Always had a kind word, humor, a story to share. And we all loved him very much. So we're feeling this loss today as well. I'm going to begin by calling on the cantor to recite a psalm in Hebrew, and then I'm going to call Rabbi Riddenlawyer to do the same so they can participate with us today. And then we'll proceed with those who will be speaking. Cantor Schiffman.
מזמור לדוד, אדוני אלוהי לא יחסר, בנותיך יביצני, על מי מנוחות ינהלני. נפשי ישובב, ינחני בממגלי צדק, למען שמו. גם כלך בגצר מוות, לא יירא רע, כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומשענתך, המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני שולחן, נגד צורריי, ישנת בשם בראשי. Osir Revaya,
Thank you, Cantor. We'll come back to you for the El Male. Hal? Rabbi Rudendoria, if you would please share remarks and lead us in a psalm.
A Psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Maury dwelt in the house of the Lord, our house of the Lord, for so many years, and we're so grateful for him. As Rabbi Weiss began, as he opened, as an usher, Maury was such an ambassador for our synagogue. Always a smile, always kindness, always warmth to all who entered the doors of our house of the Lord. We are extremely grateful for his service, his devotion, his kindness, the love that he gave to all of our congregants, all in our congregational family, and to us as clergy. I will always remember his friendship, and may he only be remembered with love. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi Rudendoria. And now, I want to call on members of the family to speak. So, Bruce, if you'll come up and call Grace, we'll have her speak first. Oh, I'm not supposed to touch that, sorry.
Okay, I have it.
Okay, you're on, Aunt Grace.
Now?
Yes, now.
Hold the bottom of the phone to the mic.
It looks like someone else is speaking now. Bruce.
Tell you just holding the phone.
I'm just holding the phone. You're talking, Aunt Grace.
Okay. All right. All right. This is Rhoda's sister, Grace, speaking. All right. This is Rhoda's sister, Grace, speaking. I'd like to speak on behalf of all my sisters. My deceased sister, Rhoda, who was Maury's wife. My sister, Greta, who was in Florida. My sister, Rita, who was in Cleveland. And for myself, and I'm in Massachusetts with my daughter, who is here with me. There were 4 girls, 4 sisters, as I said. We did not have a brother, so to speak. Maury was our brother in many ways. As everybody else has said, and I'll try not to be repetitive, he was kind, he was good, and we respected him greatly. To sum it up, so I don't take too much time, Maury was a true mensch. That can never be denied. Everyone knew he was a mensch and loved him for it. I'm glad to be a part of this service, even from so many miles away. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Sent someone here. Okay. Can I take this off or not? Keep it on. Okay. Okay. Since Mark asked me to do this, I've got a lot to say for him. Maury Bordman, he was not a great man. He was a good man. He was a good man to his mother, who he adored and caring for her for her entire life. He was a good man at his job at Seaway, where he worked for 40 years for one job his entire life. He was a good man for his longtime best friend, my Uncle Lenny. He always talked about that he and Uncle Lenny bought season tickets for the Browns to go to the Browns games every year. But watching the Browns game was not important for him, or not what he remembered. The thing that he remembered the most is that he was able to sit with the entire Greenfeld family and be a family with them for that. And he was also proud of the fact that he saw me playing piccolo on the 50-yard line in 1970 when the Youngstown State University band played, and he was there. Doesn't remember the Browns games, but he remembers those. When Uncle Lenny had passed away, it was one of the times he probably could have been a bad man. His mother went up to him and said, "Have you gone up to console Rhoda?" And he said, "No, she's my best friend's wife." And she said, "If you don't do this, you're going to regret this the rest of your life. Now go be a good boy and go see her." And he said that was probably the best decision he ever made in his life. He was a good family man. Sons, grandkids, great-grandkids, nieces, nephews, people coming off the street were all considered to be family. There was nothing else except family for him. One of his fondest memories, besides being with Aunt Rhoda, was his time during the war, where he was rewarded for being a good man. Now, Mark and I had talked about this. Mark told me about this weekend where he got a Bronze Star for effort in the war. And I recalled an incident that he had told me about, or told Mary Jo and I about, just sometime during this year. Never heard about it before. But during the war, his troop was ordered to go out and patrol the area, looking for the enemy. And his sergeant, since he was sergeant, he was the point man. But he said he was probably more the point man, not because he was a sergeant, but he was the shortest one of the troop and be the hardest to hit. And as he was going, he heard a bee go by. And then suddenly he realized it was a bullet. So he was able to warn his troops and save them. My wife and I visited him over the years, and more so after he went to Stone Gardens. He had a good time with his fellow residents, the aides, the staff. He never complained about his time there and actually thrived there. MJ and I always talked about the fact that every once in a while Mark would have to come in with a new pair of bigger pants for him because the food was really good. He would reminisce endlessly about the good times he had when we visited, reveling in past events over and over and over and over and over and over again. I don't think he ever talked about one thing bad except one thing. Invariably on each visit, he would say he was the luckiest man to have been married to the most beautiful woman in the world. And he wished he had one more day with her. Uncle Maury, we miss you terribly. You lived a long, happy life with the woman you loved. Mary Jo says that you were the greatest and the happiest veteran she's ever knew. You were my hero, and I'll always emulate you and try to remember you that you were a good man.
Okay. If you were to look up how to be a great man and the best grandpa possible, there would be his picture and a story of his life. He is by far the most patient, kind, and loving man you could have ever had the honor of knowing. I don't believe there's a single person that could say a negative word about him. Even at a young age, he was very brave and selfless man to fight for his country and serve in World War II. He honorably served in his artillery division and received the Bronze Star. Luckily enough, he came home to later meet the love of his life. After the death of my grandma's first husband, Lenny, Grandpa's own mother, and I feel we are very repetitive here, but we have there's so many good ones that everybody's going to say the same ones. Grandpa's own mother approached him and said, "You need to call Rhoda. She needs a friend right now." He replied, "But that's my friend's wife." His mother encouraged him, saying she still needs a friend at this time. So, of course, he listened to his mom, and he called her up to see if they could get together as friends. Little did either of them know that they would fall in love and get married. They became the most ultimate love of each other's life. He took on 2 sons like they were his own and was always there to help whenever needed. Through everything, he was very hardworking and a supportive man. He adored my grandma and would do just about anything to make her happy. Grandpa was always a part of everything we did. As a child, I was blessed and I could go over there every single weekend. We always went to Friday's restaurant where they would walk around with me so I could see all the old decorations they used to have hanging all over the walls. Every summer, just about every single summer, they would take me to SeaWorld. Grandma was so sweet, and she would sit there with me in that splash zone every single time, and we would get drenched by Shamu. That was the only time Grandpa would put his foot down, draw the line, and said, "Nope, I'm not smelling like a wet fish all day." So he would sit like 10 rows past the splash zone, so he had no chance of getting wet during this. But every year he would take us and he would put up with our craziness. And me and Grandma would run around all day soaking wet, but we loved it. Over the following years, Grandpa had many grandchildren, which he loved so much. Every time one of his grandkids would call, he would sound so excited and genuinely happy to speak to you every single time you called, no matter how often it was. After my grandma passed away, my grandpa went through many transitions that he had to deal with. Through it all, he was so amazing and understanding. It was so calming how he could just accept the next stage in life and never look at anything negatively. He was always so positive about life and was so grateful for everything he had, including his family. He was truly a role model to his family and everyone that knew him, and very highly respected. I remember right before he stopped driving, I got in his car one day to help him with something while I was in town from Texas. The radio was on to the old music that him and my grandma used to listen to all the time. I just sat there in the car for a moment and smiled. And it wasn't my taste of music, of course, but I thoroughly enjoyed listening to it and could never change the station. It just brought back so many happy memories of going places with them. I can picture him right now with his hat on, driving me and Grandma anywhere we wanted to go, no matter what. My grandpa, Morris Bordman, lived a very long, happy, amazing life. He was surrounded by the people he loved and that truly loved and adored him the most. He is now reunited with his one true love. Together, hand in hand, they will continue to watch after us and be in peace, knowing how much they are both loved. Of course, I wish I could talk to him and see him one more time, but I know how happy he is to be back in Grandma's arms.
Such really beautiful, touching words from all three of you. Our rabbis teach words that come from the heart penetrate the heart, and your words all penetrate our hearts today. I know that the stories and descriptions, the love that you each so beautifully portrayed is something which each one of you here and those who are watching on streaming, the whole family, hold very dear. Maury was a very loving, devoted husband to Rhoda, and a loving brother to Rhoda's sisters, to Grace and Greta and Rita. A loving father. He never used the word stepfather. A loving father to Bill and to you, Mark and Terry. A loving grandfather to Jennifer and Joe, to Tiffany and Jim, to Jacob, to Josh and Alyssa, to Angela and her fiancé Nick, to Amanda and Stephen and Richard and Jennifer. And Kanahora, he was a proud, loving great-grandfather of 19 great-grandchildren. 18? 18. I took it from the... that's okay. Well, maybe you're looking forward to more. That's okay. Nothing wrong with the family growing. He was a loving brother to Bernice. And of course, a loving, devoted son to Harry and Anna of blessed memory. He joins his parents and his beloved Rhoda now. And all of you who loved him in life are now left to revere his memory in death. And I pray that your memories always, as I saw yesterday and I see today, bring a smile to your lips and warm your heart. That his love still is a source of strength and inspiration to you. Maury really is the epitome of the description found in Psalms of the ideal man or human being, mensch. The psalmist wrote, "Who is righteous and pure enough to be able to stand on God's holy mountain, the place where the holy temple stood in Jerusalem?" And his answer is, the one who has clean hands and a pure heart, and a sense of awe of God. And those words describe Maury well. Deeply devoted to his faith and his people, so very active in synagogue life, as has already been mentioned by myself and Rabbi Ruth Nuria, deriving for himself great spiritual sustenance from his connection to prayer, God, to synagogue and community, but also helping serve those around him. And he was an individual of clean hands and pure heart, filled with only goodness and kindness and love. You've already talked about Maury and his service in World War II, how he fought in Japan and the Philippines, and served through World War II and the Korean War. You also mentioned that he spent some time guarding the East Coast, and that he liked to say that he saved the U.S. from invasion by Germany by patrolling the coast with his dog Tippy. He spoke with great affection of his time in the military and had many stories to share. When he came back from the military, he worked first for AMP Foods and then Seaway Foods, where he had a long and very successful career. Maury did not marry for many years before he married Rhoda. He lived with his mother in a 2-story home in Cleveland Heights. And he served as a comptroller along with your father Lenny at Seaway Foods. In fact, your father, Lenny, and your other father, Maury, they grew up together in the Kinsman-Buckeye neighborhood. They were childhood friends, and they remained best friends for life. Maury was best man at Lenny's wedding when Lenny married your mother. And Maury always said that Lenny was the brother that he never had. Even after your father and mother, Lenny and Rhoda, married each other, Maury was still best friends with them and was with them all the time. Before they were married, Maury was always in Lenny's house growing up. And when Lenny and Rhoda got together, he was always at their house and with them too. Several times, Rhoda and Lenny even invited Maury to come with them on their vacations. You shared that your mom liked to sit at the pool or to swim, but of course Lenny liked to play golf. And so they would invite Maury with, so he could be with Lenny while she could have her private time at the pool. And in fact, there was one time you described to me when they had plans to go to the Nevele in the Catskills. And Rhoda said to Lenny, "Did you invite Maury?" And Lenny said, "No." And Rhoda said, "I'll invite Maury." I love that story. And after your father, Lenny, passed away in 1974, Maury and Rhoda remained friends. But Maury started to distance himself from Rhoda. And then, as was said, his mother, Annie, pushed Maury to hang out with her, saying to him that Rhoda is a single mother just like I was. She's lonely and she needs you. Their love for each other blossomed right away. You shared a beautiful story that the first time that Morris asked your mom on a date, he asked her about going out on Saturday, and she said the boys were busy, they wouldn't be able to. And he said, "I don't mean the boys." And she said, "Are you asking me out on a date?" And he said, "Yes." And she said, "I can't date you, you're my brother." But they did go out on that first date. And Maury, being the kind soul and the gentleman that he is, did all the chivalrous things that a guy does for a girl on a date, at least used to do. He paid for the meal, he helped her on with her coat, and by the end, she began to be able to see that she could date him. And quickly they fell in love with each other. By 1976, they were married. The marriage came very quickly after the engagement because the whole family was in town for the 50th anniversary of Rhoda's parents. And so they decided they would marry the day after the party while everybody was still in town. They were deeply in love with each other, and they were well suited for each other. The two of them were the kindest, most generous people who never had a bad word to say about anybody. Two peas in a pod. Mark, you said you've never met anybody like them, that in your mind and heart they stand apart for the depth of their kindness and generosity and selflessness and humility that they demonstrated in their lives. Maury always had a good story to tell, whether it was about World War II or about growing up in the Kinsman neighborhood or other adventures. Rhoda and Maury together had a small bungalow house, but they never thought twice about having maybe 50 people over at a time because they loved to entertain. They were very social, and they had a lot of friends. They would take Rhoda's parents out every Saturday because they did not want them to be alone. And Maury helped with all the banking for her parents, driving them to and from the bank every week. Yesterday, you went to Stone Garden to get his personal items. And you shared that the nurses and staff there were in tears They all had stories about how kind-hearted and selfless Maury was, and many of them had taken selfies with him that they cherished and held on to on their phones. They shared them with you. And that selflessness by both your mom and your dad is what drew them together and kept them together. When Maury was in the hospital for heart surgery, Rhoda was with him in the hospital every day. And when Rhoda passed, Maury said his time with her just was not enough. If he could have only had one more day, a little more time. And he felt that way every day since her passing. That's when his real decline began. It took so much out of him. Not a day passed that he did not talk to her picture or speak to her or about her. Now, mind you, he did have a girlfriend at Stone Gardens, Alice. He kind of found himself as a ladies' man in this last years. And Alice and Maury were kind of boyfriend and girlfriend. But even when they would sit down together, he would talk about how perfect Rhoda was and how much he missed her. And of course, Alice understood she had lost a spouse too, and you can do that at that age and stage of life. But he couldn't stop talking about her. Nothing could replace her, ever. She was the love of his life. He was also an extraordinary grandparent, loving and doting, kind, patient, proud. Proud of you, that is, not proud of himself. Proud of each of his grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Tiffany, you shared that it was never I love you, it was always I adore you. As I know it was for all the other grandchildren as well. The two of you enjoyed a special bond, especially over these past 4 years. And he had a bond with all of his grandchildren. Tiffany, you went over to Stone Gardens every Wednesday. You called it Grandpa Day. You brought your boys over. And oh, the look on his face when he would see them walk in, it was priceless. He told you everything, sometimes more than you wanted to know. A little of that came out in our meeting yesterday. You'll notice it's not in my notes for today. But it reflects a sense of trust and confidence that he had in you and the depth of your relationship. And at the same time reflects his openness, his transparency, his innate goodness. He was an amazingly funny guy. And we got to see that sort of humor in the synagogue also. And he would always have a joke or a quip to share that would make us smile. He was quiet by nature. That's how I remember him from the first years I came to town and how you described him. He was quieter than Rhoda, but after she passed, he kind of flowered. But oh, how he loved all of you so much. And just as he was such a loving grandfather, he was such a loving father to the two of you. And Mark, you described how he took you out to teach you how to drive when you were 16. The car was stick shift, and he had to teach you how to use the clutch. And you kept coming off the clutch too quickly, and the car kept hopping. But he never raised his voice. He would just say, let's try again. He had such patience as he taught you. And Mark, I understand that at 17, you were anxious to join the military. And Maury and Rhoda, your mom and dad, they helped you because they knew it was something that you wanted. And of course, Maury was very proud of his own service in the military and so proud of you that you would want to do that. You had talked to a recruiter and they had promised you particular things that would be part of the package if you agreed to join. Education, a certain classification, and certain clearances. But then after you signed up, they switched things around on you. Kind of a bait and switch so that the deal was not what you had agreed to get into. And you sought to be released from that. And you were ultimately released of that obligation. What you didn't know was that Maury had been a part of that behind the scenes, calling the congressman to get them to intervene. He never told you that. I think you only found that out yesterday. And Mark, when you were young, you used to go to the Browns games with Lenny, your dad, and Maury, who would be your dad-to-be. And you knew Maury from family picnics and other gatherings. He was a good friend to you long before he became a father to you. And when the time came, after your father Lenny had passed away, when Maury got together with your mom, that made it easy for you. It often can be very challenging for a child to accept into their lives a new partner for their parent when one parent dies. But you were old enough to understand that your mom needed somebody in her life, to see how good Maury was for her, how happy they were together. You told her, who could possibly be better for you? Dad would be very happy. And for you, it was the best possible thing that could happen. Because it was this person who already played such a large role in your life, who already was a friend and mentor, who stepped into that role, making it comfortable for you, because you knew the person that would be your father after he married your mother would be great. He was, you said, 1 in a million. And Laura, you spoke so beautifully on behalf of all the nieces and nephews, sharing your love for him and a beautiful story, how he gave you away at your wedding because your father had passed away suddenly 4 days before. And you called Uncle Maury to ask him, would he give you away? Would he escort you down the aisle? And Maury said, oh, those will be big shoes to fill. But he did not hesitate to walk you down that aisle. He was there for you. And he became a father figure to you. And you knew that he did not have his own birth kids, and you did not have your birth father, and so you became especially attached to him. You would send him Father's Day cards and stayed in very close contact. He was like a second dad to you. There are so many beautiful memories of times shared, many of them everyday memories that are just filled with that love and kindness, with that humor and generosity, with that commitment to family, with that love for each of you that filled your hearts. We all change through the years, but not Maury. His hair never became fully gray. At the most, it was salt and pepper. And when they stopped shaving him, Mark, you saw that his beard was completely black. And you commented, you don't even have a completely colored beard anymore. And yet somehow his was. But more importantly, he didn't change in other ways. In his shaving, that he consistently did throughout the years, with an old-fashioned mechanical shaver with a steel blade, foaming his face up with lather, slowly, for what seemed like hours, shaving with the door closed for privacy in Tilstone Gardens, where he kept it open. And he never lost his love of cars or his passion for reading. But most of all, what never changed was his abiding love for all of you. And I pray that love should always be with you. You know, nothing in life is coincidental, and we find ourselves now just a couple days before the festival of Hanukkah, which begins on Thursday evening. What an appropriate time it is for us to honor Mori for all that he meant to you and for all that he meant to us. On the evening of Hanukkah, we will light the Hanukkah menorah, the Chanukiah. We'll light it with one candle the first night, and then 2 the next, and then 3, and then 4, until the last night. All 8 are burning, plus the shamash. Our sages teach us that we increase candles each night in order to show that we should go up in holiness, that every day we should try to be better, more holy, more pious, more humble, more loving, more selfless, more giving, more committed to others around us. That's the way Mori lived his life. And when we light that Hanukkah menorah, we use a separate candle to light it, because we're not allowed to light it with the actual flames of the menorah. So we take another candle, the shamash, the servant candle, and we light the candles with that candle. And I like to think of that shamash candle as the empowerer. It is the light of the shamash candle that makes possible the light of the other candles. And in a real sense, Mori was the shamash in all of your lives. The force that enabled you to feel the light of his love, of goodness in the world. He filled you with that light. And may his light continue to glow within your hearts. And may it continue to bring healing and goodness to our world. May his memory be for a blessing. We'll rise now as we chant the Amalei Rachamim, the memorial prayer. I'm going to call the cantor, who is going to chant it on our behalf. Hi. You ready? Okay. Okay, Cantor Shippen will chant the Amalei.
El Malay Rachamim Shochain Bameromim Ametei Menucha Nechona Kanfei HaShechina B'manon Kedoshim Tehorim Kezohar Arakim Azirim Nishmat Moshe Yosef ben Abraham Tzvi HaLevi Shalach le'olamon Began Eden Tehei Menuchato Ahana Bal HaRachamim Asireu B'Seit Knafecha Le'olamim Utzeror v'tzoror achai benishmaton Adonai hu nachalaton v'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo v'nomar amen.
O God, full of mercy, who dwells on high, we pray that you grant proper rest beneath the wings of the divine presence in the lofty heights where are the holy and pure who shine like the glow of the firmament. There we pray you give eternal rest to the soul of our beloved Mori. May his resting place be in paradise. May God shelter him for eternity under the presence of his divine wings, and bind up his soul in the bond of everlasting life. May the Lord be his inheritance. May he rest in peace. And we say together, Amen. We'll continue with the interment at Mount Olive Cemetery.